I want to welcome everyone to the Carson Career Fall Series. My name is Leanne Ralston. I'm a career consultant for the Carson College of Business, and I'm excited to get started with today's event, How to Maximize Your Online Presence, sponsored by Cintas, one of our sponsors of the Career Networking Night this fall. As everyone logs in, I'd like to remind you of a few following guidelines. Mute your microphone if it's not already muted. If possible, turn on your video so we can see you. And Q&A will be at the end. You can raise your hand or you can use the chat box to ask a question. WSU students, if you could complete the survey provided at the end of the session, we'd really appreciate it. With no further ado, I want to introduce Jennifer Dittell, who's a sales representative, and Ellie Hirsch, who's a management trainee with Cintas. Thank you, ladies.
Awesome. Hi, guys. So I will go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. All right. Awesome. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, sweet. So thank you for introducing us. My name is Ellie Hirsch, and I am a management trainee at Cintas, but also a Wazoo alumni. So as always, go Cougs. And then I'll let Jenny introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny. I'm also a WSU alumni, and I was a management trainee, but recently graduated into a sales representative role.
And we're here to tell you how to maximize your online presence and just some tips to stand out during this virtual career fair that, we're all trying to figure out. Although I'd love to be there this fall, I know Jenny and I always look forward to coming back to the Wazoo campus and being able to see you guys face to face. I think this will be equally as awesome. So just kind of a little agenda of what we're going to go over. We are going to show you how to get ready before the career networking nights and the career fairs and how to get ready for your interviews. So during that, we'll talk about creating your why, preparing your pitch, how to research the company. And then during the event, we'll give you some tools on what you can do during the event, how to own your square, and what to do to follow up with a company after you've been interviewing with them or talking to them. So to get started, I'll kind of talk about creating your why. And what I mean by this are what are some of your non-negotiables for a company. So for example, some of my personal ones when I was going through the career fair 2 years ago, I really wanted something that was close to home. So location was really important to me. Stability was another big one. I really wanted to be with a company that I knew would be around 5, 10, 15 years down the road. It was just super important to me that I was with a stable company. And then another one was growth opportunities, especially for women. So don't be afraid to ask some of those questions when you are sitting down with employers. I know I asked Cintas, what are the opportunities for women within the workplace to grow and climb the ladder? Incoming salary is another one. It was hard for me to talk about when I was still a student, but make sure you know the salary range that you're looking for before going into, an interview with a company. Equality is another big one. And then lastly, for me, having an open door policy with leaders that are approachable. So I wanted to be able to work for a company where I felt comfortable asking the general manager the same question as I would an hourly frontline partner that's working out in our plant. And then when you think about your why, take some time to truly think about what they are to you and personalize them because you're the one that's going to be working for that company. And then ask yourself, does the company that you're talking to or interviewing with have those characteristics? So for me, Cintas hit almost every single box. And of the top 3 that were most important, they, knocked it out of the park and they hit everything that I was looking for in a company. And I'll pass it over to Jenny. She's going to talk about preparing your pitch. I'm sure you've all heard about an elevator pitch. So take it away, Jenny.
Awesome. So a pitch is super, super important. You only have a short amount of time to talk to your employer, and you got to make sure that you're allowing yourself to stand out. So you got to think about, what can I say that encapsulates all of me, but gets the point across also in a short amount of time. Usually in first impressions, you got about 1 to 2 minutes to make your impression on somebody before they start thinking and having their own opinions about who you are as a candidate and what they would think about you as an employee. So I would practice this as much as possible. Grab friends to talk about it. Do it in front of the mirror if you are a little bit too embarrassed to do it in front of somebody else. But a pitch is really what can differentiate you from, you know, somebody just giving you a flyer and moving on. Well, this would be in the physical sense, or wanting to talk a little bit more and getting deeper and knowing all those whys and how you can uncover a lot of those whys right away before you even get into the interview. But also keep it vague. Think about it as kind of like a verbalization of your resume. So your resume should only be 1 page, but it doesn't show everything that you've done, but enough that you can answer questions. So thinking about like, what situation are you currently in? You know, what organizations are you a part of? Are you in any leadership roles? Where do you want to go? What do you see with your future? What do you want to do down the line? Maybe 5 years, 10 years. That's very important. And how are you going to accomplish your goals? You know, they want to know like, okay, do you have drive? Are you moving somewhere? And are you positioning yourself in a way that you can get to where you're meeting your goals? And that fits in with the company goals as well. So I had a pitch that I'll just share very, very quickly that I had when I was at WSU. It was, hi, my name is Jenny. I'm currently an executive board member for Alpha Kappa Psi Professional Business Fraternity. I'm a student in HR, and I have X, Y, and Z accolades, and this is all of my other involvements, and I'm looking for this in an employer. Something like that. Just really, really short, but enough to let them know, like, what are you currently doing and how you could fit in with the company in the future. So now we're going to the next important part, which is research, research, research. It is so important that you figure out what the company is about that you're working with and who is going to be at the recruiting events. What companies align with your why? There's so many different companies out there that do so many different things that there's a spot for everybody. You just gotta do a little bit of work to figure out who it would be, which representatives you're meeting with. Usually on LinkedIn, you can figure out, you know, who's the recruiter for your area for a certain company. They'll sometimes post about like the events that they're going to, if you even just look at what their posts are, and what positions they're currently hiring for. You could have your dream company be at the career fair, but they might not be hiring for a position that you're qualified for, which is something very important to look out for. It doesn't mean that they're not always going to be, but knowing the timelines of when they post positions and what specifically they're coming in with. Because some years a company will come in looking to fill certain spots, and another year they'll look to fill another. So it's good to, you know, connect with those people on LinkedIn as soon as you can. Message them, say, hey, I'm going to be at this career fair, or are you going to be there? What positions are you currently like hiring for? And then also digging in a little bit more about like the companies and going to the company websites, looking up their stock price, looking up things like that, you know, so that way you can cut out a lot of the companies you might not need to talk to. So that way you can streamline your time, because everybody's busy. You probably got to go to class or something in between. So it just keeps it short and sweet and effective. And I'm going to pass it back to Ellie.
Awesome. So we are actually going to practice and do some of the things that Jenny was just talking about. So bear with me. Let's hope that this works. Okay, perfect. So sorry, I knew there would be some technological thing that I wasn't able to figure out. So just to kind of give you guys an example of some of the things that Jenny was talking about, this is obviously the Cintas homepage. So if you were to look at Amazon or Microsoft, they would have something similar. But here, you know, there's a lot of information. So take your time, you know, shamelessly spend a couple hours looking at some of the employers that you're interested in. You can see down here at the bottom, we actually have investor information. So it talks about our stock price, which as of today, our stock price was $317.99, which is awesome. You know, that's important for a lot of people. And then some of the other things, the link wasn't working earlier, so I won't make you guys watch my screen, just do the circle of death, but click on the About Us in a lot of the employers that you're looking at, and that'll show some of the important things that you may be looking for. So this will go into, you know, some of the safety procedures and policies that we have at Cintas, our corporate sustainability report, our diversity and inclusion, things that tie into your why, you might be able to find some of them here, and then maybe it'll set you up for a question that you want to ask the employer during the interview, or when you stop by their booth, you can come prepared and really show that you did your research. Like I said, most websites will have an About Us section, and it'll talk about things that that company has in the news. Like Jenny said, their stock price, different locations that they have, if that's something that's important to you as well. And while we're here, I'll kind of talk about Cintas as well, just because I know when I went through the career fair, I had no idea who Cintas was. And now that I'm familiar with it, I like to call it the biggest company that no one has heard of. So we help customers and companies get ready for the workday. So we provide a wide variety of products and services. We actually have 3 divisions. So we have the rental division, which is our biggest division. And then we have a first aid and safety division and a fire protection division. So our rental division consists of uniform and apparel, and then facility service products. So the uniforms, we rent uniforms and facility service items to a wide variety of companies across the nation and Canada. From floor mats to toilet paper to shirts, pants, we basically do everything that you could think of to get a company ready for the workday. And the whole idea is that that customer never has to leave their front door to get everything that they need to run their business for the day, week, month. And we actually come and service those accounts on a weekly basis. And then we actually launder all the products and services for them as well. So just a little tidbit on it. I will stop sharing and reshare my PowerPoint. So bear with me for just a second. All right. So now that you guys had a little bit of an idea of how to practice, you guys can implement that. And like Jenny was saying, do it before the career fair. Maybe once you figure out the businesses that you were interested at the career fair, do it before you go into an interview. It's really important that you research about your company, because it shows that you are more invested than the average person that's just coming by to stop by the booth. And you can prepare questions that show, okay, I really, really like Cintas over these other companies. How can I impress them with these questions? So that's something that is really important. And I wish I would have done a little bit more of researching before I went into some of my interviews. All right. Let's see. All right, so you never get a second chance to make a great first impression. Jenny kind of touched on this already, but she's going to dive into how you guys can make a great impression virtually. I know it might seem daunting, and it's a lot easier to make that impression in person because people can see you, they can feel your energy. It's just a little easier. But Jenny will talk about how you guys can own your square in all the virtual events that are coming up.
All right, your square, our new lives that we have here virtually, thanks to our current state of the world. I don't know how many of you have thought too much about this and what you're already doing, but when you're coming in front of an employer, you kind of want to try to go a step above what you're already doing. So first and foremost, you got to check your workspace. Make sure that there's nothing in the background if you can help it. We know that you're going to be at home. There's nothing wrong with like being in your bedroom. I'm in my bedroom right now, but you want to make sure that you have no profanity, nothing that is extracurricular out and about, and make sure that it's as free from clutter as possible. So if you have to even like set up a corner in the wall or something, because that's the only blank space, then go ahead and do it. You can be uncomfortable for 30 minutes for what the payout is going to be at the end of this. Check your technology, do some test runs of your Wi-Fi, making sure everything's connected, that you have audio, your video is working, and that your connection is good with your Wi-Fi. Proper lighting, make sure the light source is behind the camera this way, so that way it shines onto your face and lights up your whole body, because if it's behind, usually you get a cast and it kind of washes you out and fuzzes out your face a little bit. It's just so that way everybody can see you a little bit better, since we can't see you in person. Angle your camera slightly above your hairline, so just ever so slightly up, so that way it defines your chin a little bit. That's just a nice tip. Dress to impress. When in doubt, business professional. I say always go business professional in interview situations and career networking situations. Dress to impress is a real thing, especially with Cintas. We're like, for us, for example, we're a professional image company. So we're going to want to see people who fit the image, who are also like clean, well shaven, well groomed. They took the time to get ready and picked out a really nice outfit. something that's, you know, modest, but not leaning the lines of casual. It also depends on what company you're going for, and that's where research comes in. Be aware of your posture. Make sure you're sitting up straight with your shoulders back. You can usually tell when someone's slouching. Good posture shows interest and that you're actively listening and caring about what's going on in front of you. Eliminate all distractions from your work area. So put your phone on do not disturb. I keep mine across the room usually, unless I have an emergency, but that shouldn't be the case. So like make sure your TV is off. If you have to go and ask your roommates to, you know, be a little bit quiet, that helps too. And always look at the camera. Put a sticky note over yourself to stop looking. I know sometimes I get caught looking at myself just to make sure that I'm looking good, but no, usually people can notice if it's one-on-one and you're just looking at your camera instead of at yourself. All right, so let's go on to an example of owning your square. Show your personality. Don't be afraid. I mean, we're virtual, but we still want to know who you are, and we want to get to know you as a person. Don't be afraid to show who you are in any sense of the term. We want your most genuine self, so that way we can tell if you're a real fit or not. And that's going to be with everybody, because you could just find your fit someplace else. Who knows? Actively listen. Make sure that, you know, nodding, writing down notes, something like that. Sell yourself. That's where the pitch comes in, and make it memorable. So making sure that you have some nice talking point, learn something about the employer that you're talking to is usually really, really good. So do a little bit of rapport building if you have the time, and just try to figure out, you know, how long has the recruiter worked there? How long have they been in their line of work? Something like that.
Yeah, and something just to add a little bit on that as well. This was in person, so it was a little different for me, but for making it memorable and kind of doing your research as well. If you know someone that works at that company, reach out to them. If it was a friend, a family member that, you know, a cousin, your dad's friend, someone like that. I had my dad who knew someone within Cintas, and I actually talked with her one-on-one before some of my interviews. And I was able to say, hey, I talked to so-and-so at Cintas, and the people that I was actually interviewing with were like, wow, like you went out of your way to talk to this person for, you know, 15, 20 minutes and ask her some questions. And they were super impressed by that. So if you know someone, even if they just graduated, reach out to them and ask them some questions, see if they'll give you any tips, pointers, things like that. All right, so another little inspirational quote: nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Kind of ties into everything that we've been talking about today. And it's extra important that you do bring enthusiasm to the table with it all being virtual, just because, you know, we're not there to see your guys' smiling faces in person. All right, so saying thanks and staying connected. So good follow-up is really, really important. Send a handwritten, personalized thank you card. This is something that my dad taught me, and I did with everyone that I interviewed with. So make sure you grab a business card from anyone that you talk to or interview with, and take the time to go out and buy some cards and just write that personal thank you card, and then send it to the address that you were given. And also stay connected with them on LinkedIn. We have a bunch of technology available to us. And so if you connect with that person, you're going to stay top of mind more so than someone that doesn't go that extra mile to do that. And then just always continue learning and about the company. Stay up to date on their stock prices. Look at them in the news to see if they've made any acquisitions recently and have bought any companies or things like that, because when you go back for an interview or a follow-up and they see that you've been staying up to date on the news or anything like that, it'll definitely make you stand out a little more. And again, keep your name at the top of their mind. Oh, that girl Ellie, she in the interview, she really blew me away because she knew A, B, and C, and she had seen that her stock price had consistently climbed, you know, and stuff like that. So that's almost equally as important as the actual interview, is just saying thank you, and it goes a long way. All right, so before we open it up for questions, if any of you are interested in learning more about Cintas and the management trainee role that both Jenny and myself completed, Please sign up for one of our breakout sessions or an info session. My email is down there along with our talent acquisition manager. And then there's the URL that you guys can take a picture of or write down, and you guys can register for Cintas information and things like that. But now we'll open it up for any questions that you guys may have. Don't be shy. Anything that you can think of, we're here to answer for you. I don't know where the chat box is.
Not all at once now.
We had one question asking about it being recorded, and I'm just letting them know it's being recorded. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions in the chat box, or virtually raise your hand and just ask away.
Yep, we were alumni, so we were in your shoes at one point. So you can even just ask our perspective on going through the career fair. I know that things are a little bit different now, but I would still like to help as much as I can.
So I have a quick question. So I'm the one person that just joined right now and asked for the recording, but I guess since I did miss the presentation, hopefully you guys didn't touch on this topic. And if you did, you can totally just not answer it and I can watch the recording. But what do you all notice sometimes students, when they're having a conversation, what do you feel like they're sometimes missing other than not lacking to do the research? Like, what do you sometimes feel like is missing? Let's say the student is prepared and does the research, but sometimes what do you feel like the students could do to just make that conversation more unique and genuine, I guess, or more memorable? Thank you.
Yeah, Jenny,
Well,
do you want to answer first?
Yes, I can. So I would say that confidence is usually the number one thing, knowing that you've practiced and that you've rehearsed talking to strangers about career things. Sometimes the biggest thing that I notice is that somebody seems a little bit too stiff and not quite themselves when they're talking to employers. So just that's where coming in and practicing and making sure that you know your elevator speech, and generally what you personally want, what your whys are. That comes through a lot more when you're confident in practice versus kind of trying to show up last second or scramble together to put this together. What about you, Ellie?
Yeah, so pretty much just echoing what Jenny said, but something else that I noticed in the past 2 years that I've been recruiting, and then when I went into the career fair when I was a student, is asking questions to them. Don't let there be kind of those like awkward silences. Make sure that if you actually are interested in that company, that you maybe ask some questions when you are talking to them as well. Don't let them do all the talking. That's something that I think some students either lack or maybe they didn't know was something that they should do. But ask, how long have you been with the company? What's your favorite thing about the company that you work for? Where are you from? I mean, they are sometimes equally as nervous as you guys are because we want to find good candidates, just like you guys want to find good jobs. So I'd say that's my probably number one bit of advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I see Alyssa asked, what did you guys major in? So I was a business marketing major when I went to Wazoo. And when I first came in, I was unknown. And then I kind of decided on marketing just because I eventually wanted to go into sales.
So I was a human resources major, actually. I was originally going to do business admin and physical therapy just to eventually run my own business. But then I realized I didn't want to be in school long enough to become a physical therapist. So I switched to business, mostly for the rate of return on just the degree, and loved it ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I loved marketing. Sorry, I feel like I cut someone off, but.
Peyton has a question.
All right. So when I get older and like in my career, I want to be like a leader. So what are some traits that you see in leaders in your own career? And what traits, how do you highlight your traits and make that apparent when you are part of these career expos. Because I don't want to be like talking to somebody and just be like, oh yeah, I'm so good at this. Like, I don't want to see like I'm boasting completely about myself. But yeah.
Do you want to start that one, Ellie?
Yeah. So first off, just to kind of talk about the first thing you said or the last thing you said, boasting about yourself is definitely not something to be afraid of. Obviously be humble, but you do want to talk about yourself because they're there to learn more about you. And both Jenny and myself, the whole idea of the management trainee role is to be future leaders and managers of Cintas. So, you know, highlighting your own leadership qualities is something that you can do, you know, just by talking to them in the first couple minutes that you walk up. You can say, you know, hi, my name's Ellie and I'm a marketing degree or I'm a marketing major here, and then talk about some of the things that you like. And a lot of those will kind of go over into some of your leadership qualities. So I am like very empathetic and I talk about some of my experiences that I had at Wazoo, and I'm a very empathetic leader. And so I just kind of threw in some things here and there to highlight that that is who I am and that I work really well with all types of people. So for an example is I would use my experience with group projects. So with group projects, I was typically always the leader because I could work well with so many different people. And I understood, okay, you know, Josh has a different background and different things going on than Amy may over here. So you have to be understanding of that. And I would use that often in my examples because it kind of highlighted some of the things that I was good at as a leader. And never be afraid to, you know, talk about any of those things. If you're really good with numbers and you know that you'll be able to lead a team by being numbers driven, just talk about that. And that's the kind of stuff they want to hear. So don't be afraid to talk about yourself a lot.
And I would also add that make sure that you sort of make a list of like tangible skills like organization, how fluent are you in certain programs, or how much experience do you have outside of schoolwork doing actual leadership tasks. So if you're a part of anything in the community, and making sure that that also reflects on your resume and with tangible numbers. So it's one thing to say that I was, you know, an executive member of my fraternity, right? But it's another thing to say I had an event with X amount of people, executed this many days out in advance with this much planning, and I had a committee of this many people. So making sure that you're putting tangibles to it to kind of back up and legitimize the experience, because somebody can say, oh, I have experience, but they're always going to ask, so how? Tell me more. So just offer that information up front to sort of eliminate the questions.
Thank you.
Of course.
I actually have a question about you guys' like personal experience of the career fair, and like what was the main takeaway for you, and like how did you go into it, I guess.
I was kind of I'm the student who started going to the career fair sophomore year to go like scouting out who was going to be there. I wasn't looking to talk to anybody, but I went early, started scouting, and then started researching companies on the back end and what they typically would come for. And since I started early, I was able to sort of notice patterns of what they were hiring for. So that way, as time went on, I could do less work and cut down on who the companies I actually wanted to talk to were. And then from there on, I just kind of, you know, would make sure that like starting junior year, I would go up and talk to people and have them look at my resume and ask for advice, like right then and there. Since they couldn't hire me for a post-grad role right away, I was like, hey, how can I make myself more marketable for this? And even in a post-grad role, you can always ask for feedback on things like that too. Employers are like, we're willing to give that information. We just want to help you succeed. So making sure that, you know, you even have like what helped me also was like a list of questions that I would ask everybody. So that way I had the list down. I knew like, okay, these are the 10 questions I'm going to ask every single employer, and just had that ready to go. What about you, Ellie? I know you had a different experience than I did.
Yeah. So, unlike Jenny, I didn't start going as a sophomore. which is fine. You can be either person. I went to the career fair a couple times. I think I went once when I was a freshman for a class and I was super overwhelmed. And then I definitely went junior and senior year. And I think that those are important years to go as well. For me, I really started focusing heavily on what companies I wanted to work for and interview with in the fall career fair. So fall of 2017, before I graduated. And I actually had an interview process with a company, and I decided at the last interview that it just wasn't the company for me. And so I kind of had to start over again in the spring, which is totally fine. And that's how I found Cintas. So I guess my biggest takeaway is don't not stop at a company just because you don't know who they are. And that's where research will come in as well. I didn't research, like I said, as much as I should have before going to the career fair. And I probably would have known some more of the information about Cintas and some of the other companies there. I was definitely one of those students that went straight for the big names that I knew: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Target, all of those really big companies. But take the time to get to know the small ones, the small mom and pop that, you know, have maybe only 70 employees, or go to the companies that you've never heard of, because it ended up being one of the best things that's ever happened to me, taking the time to stop and talk to a Cintas representative, because here I am today. And then how I prepared is I would just kind of take the time before going in your car and just breathe. And like I said, know that the employers are equally as nervous as you are. They want to make sure that they find good candidates to be, you know, their replacement, because that's pretty much what they're looking for is, okay, who's going to be the next generation of MTs? That's what Jenny and I are looking for when we're there. We know that we're graduating the MT program and moving on to management and leadership roles. So we want to make sure that our backfills are going to be, you know, equally as impressive, if not better than us. So I would say just take your time to breathe and really give yourself a couple of hours in there to walk the thing. It's virtual. So take a couple of hours before the actual event to, you know, really see, okay, what companies do I want to talk to, and sign up for more than maybe you're comfortable with. If you were only going to sign up for 5 virtual slots, make yourself sign up for 10 and just go through and talk to those people, because you might surprise yourself.
Thank you so much.
I have a question for Ellie and Jenny. This is Amy, everybody. And so how have you guys how has Cintas adapted to this whole virtual world? Like, so what are some of the differences between like how things were, let's say, just a semester ago when you guys were here, and then kind of now, and what are some of the adaptations that Cintas is supporting for new partners?
Yeah. So do you mean how have we changed as far as when we bring on new partners, or the everyday work life, or do you want an answer to both?
Kind of for both, but mostly speaking about like going into the virtual realm and coming into Cintas and joining the team, and what does that look like now?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and answer first. I know we recently started hiring again. So a lot of companies had a hiring freeze just with everything going on. So obviously, because we're here, but I have seen a couple of, you know, new onboarding partners come in. So we call our employees partners. And what we have done in the past is they come in and they have an orientation, and it's a really big deal when a new MT starts, because MTs are the future of Cintas. So we are still absolutely doing those. So you would come to whatever location you get hired onto. So mine was Everett, Washington. And there's a whole day of you get to watch these fun videos and you get introduced to everyone. So that part will be a little different. You won't get the tour to be introduced to everyone, because not everyone is working at our facilities right now. But you will get to meet some of the key leaders that are there, like the general manager, the HR manager, and some of the other leaders within the building. So I wouldn't say it's changed drastically, but you will have a little more of the virtual, just when you're meeting people and going through some of that stuff, more of that will be virtual than it has been in the past. but you will still get all the fun stuff of, you know, starting a new job and the excitement and nervousness and things like that. Fortunately, because we are a customer facing company and we're in the service industry, a lot of what you would be learning as a management trainee is hands-on. So not a lot of it has changed for MTs. You will still, you know, go out in the production plant. We'll have face masks, social distancing. We literally rent and sell hand sanitizer, so you never have to worry about running out of it. So we have that all over our facilities. But you get to jump right in and be hands-on. So a lot of it has stayed the same for incoming partners, especially with management trainees. But I'll let Jenny answer it as well.
Yeah. So, and another thing about day-to-day operations for me specifically that has changed as a sales rep is I've actually moved completely remote from the office. We aren't able to come into the office anymore with my position. So what Cintas has done in a short amount of time, in about April, actually, they bumped up all of their IT network support. So that way they can support an entire sales force company-wide. So this is like nationwide Canada. To be able to work online safely and not do any damage to our IT systems. And so that way we're able to still meet remotely. So we use Microsoft Teams basically twice a week minimum, and still are able to do everything at home. For a sales role like mine, since it's B2B, business to business, I'm usually out meeting customers anyways. So not much about the role has changed besides making phone calls from home and emails from my car versus going into the office. But it was a very quick pivot. And even for Cintas, because Cintas is a company that has been so ingrained in the experience of a service-based company that everything had to be in person, to now having to shift to the virtual world. It was a major shift that was made at once. We saw stock price dip like most companies did, but then we bounced all the way back and actually have now exceeded what we were pre-COVID. So we've made all the necessary changes and are seeing the labors of that.
Fantastic. Thanks for that update.
Yeah.
So are there, I mean, you talked about, you know, making the box your own, basically. Do you have some stories of maybe what you've seen that you really, really shouldn't be doing?
People in the background is the first thing. Make sure there's nobody in your background. Inappropriate signs or sayings or anything that would be like profane, violent, etc. Anything that relates to something you would do on a Friday or Saturday night in the background is probably not good. But that doesn't mean you can't show personality. You can still have, you know, your room decor of like cute signs and sayings and pictures and stuff, but just make sure that it's cute and not something that, well, think about it as if you were video chatting with your grandma. As a weird way to put it, but if you wouldn't want her to see it, you probably wouldn't want an employer to see it.
Yeah, and something for me that I actually have personally experienced is always double check if you are on mute or not on mute, because I was on a company call that had roughly 190 to 200 people on it. And some gentleman forgot to mute his microphone. And we were right at the end of the meeting, and it was an all-day meeting from 8 to 5:30, and it was like 5:35, and you could hear his wife or someone in the background, and he goes, "Yeah, they're still squawking over here." And he didn't know he was on mute and just kept going on. And our manager was like, "Excuse me, sir, like we can hear you. We are still talking." So even though a lot of it will be one-on-one, if you don't want to have them hear you, then make sure that you're on mute, because that's absolutely something that I personally have experienced with business professionals that have been, you know, with Cintas 5, 10, 15 years. Just make sure you're on mute or don't say anything that, like Jenny said, you wouldn't want your grandma to say. And then, yeah, we know that there might be dogs in the background, that someone might come home, you know, when you're talking to someone. So we know that you're human. We know that that kind of stuff is going to happen. But I absolutely agree. Don't have, you know, your roommate walking behind you. Make sure you communicate with people that, hey, I'm going to be having this interview or this conversation with so-and-so employer. I really need the desk out in the living room if it's out there, or stuff like that. And then just the phone thing is really important, and make sure that you're actively listening as well, and you're not just sitting there nodding your head, because I have had students when I've been recruiting, and I think it's easier to do virtually than in person, which is unfortunate, but even in person, I'm asking them questions and I can just see it goes one in one ear and out the other. They are not actively listening. And then when it's over, they're just like, So I would say with owning your square, make sure you are truly listening to that person. And if you have your phone there and you're scrolling through Snapchat, chances are you're not actually listening to the employer.
Also having your video on. That's actually so important that sometimes people get overlooked, which is an IT issue sometimes, but just make sure that you have your video on so we can see you.
Yeah, and if you can't have it on, just disclose that and say, hey, my video's not working, or the camera broke or something like that. They're like we said, we're human, we understand. Just be upfront.
I have another question. So, do you sometimes get students actually like on their phones while you're talking to them? Like, is that really a thing?
So I haven't experienced it when they are necessarily like walking, when it used to be at the Beasley Coliseum. I haven't seen it like that, but it's mainly when they're so distracted that you can tell that they're not interested in what you're saying. And I think we're honing in on the phone so much because that's probably the biggest distraction when you are virtual. Is it's super easy to zone out of a lecture or zone out of something that you're a video that you have to watch for, your marketing class, and just, have your phone right next to your screen and think that no one can see, your phone's right there. And so I haven't personally actually seen anyone with a phone, but it's more of, I can tell that they're not engaged and wanting to talk to me. And it's kind of like, well, there's, a line of 5 other people. So why are you taking up our time talking to you when you're not actually engaged? And I think now more than ever, with there being time slots, it's really important that those, we drill in that you have, you need to be paying attention, long story short.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Jenny and Ellie. It's been fabulous. And I look forward to seeing Cintas at our career networking night